Wanted to start on the case of the manhunt for Abdul Ezedi, of course, the main suspect in the attack in Clapham earlier this week. It's emerged from all sorts of bits of reporting that Sky News has stood up that he was convicted of a crime in 2018 and received asylum years after that. Do you think that is an example of a failure in the immigration and asylum system?
Well, we have to see what the police are able to put together and what the Crown Prosecution Service will come forward with. So it's difficult to comment on suspects. But what I can say about the asylum system is that we know that this government has been failing to return people who have failed to be granted asylum in this country. It's right that we support people when they need that support. But if people have failed to have that asylum granted, they should be returned to the origin that they came from before they came to kind of apply for it. And that's one of the reasons that hotel use is still so high in the UK, where the government is paying for hotel rooms for asylum seekers who should be returned home and haven't been. And that's why Yvette Cooper, our Shadow Home Secretary, has said that one of the things the Labour government would do would be to restaff the returns unit in the Home Office to make sure that there was quick processing of people who have failed their asylum seekers to ensure that they go home.
I want to talk about some of the economic announcements that your boss, the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, announced yesterday. Beth Rigby, in an interview afterwards, tried to get Rachel Reeves to commit very hard, multiple times, to the £28 billion of spending towards your Green Prosperity Plan. The only line she could really elicit was that the fiscal rules come first and all of our policies are subject to that iron discipline. Is the message from Labour that nothing is more important than the economy, even the environment?
Well, the environment is important, but the economy is at the bedrock of our ability to do anything about it. And that's why Rachel is right to say that our fiscal rules are non-negotiable and will never play fast and loose with the economy in the way that the Conservatives have, because that's a risk to the country's finances. And as people have experienced with their mortgage bills and energy bills and lots of other bills, to family finances as well. But look, the Green Prosperity Plan is about future investment. It's not about day-to-day spending on public services. And, anybody that runs a business will know future investment will depend on the success of your business and the market conditions at that time. And for us, that means that the number that we will get to, if we are in government, will be subject to two things. First, it will be subject to the state of the economy. We knew we're going to inherit a bad economy from the Conservatives, but we have plans to turn that around. And of course, we hope to be successful doing that. But it will also be subject to case-by-case business cases, that if I'm the Chief Secretary to the Treasury in the next Labour government, I will have to sign off. And so that will depend on what the types of projects are, what the types of partnerships are with the private sector, and also our ability for the market and for our country to deliver on those projects. So the number will move around just as a matter of fact. It will depend on this, on the strength of the economy. We will only invest when it's affordable to do so, but also on a case-by-case basis, working with the private sector.
The number initially came from what the estimated cost was per year to deliver the central part of your plan, which was zero carbon electricity by 2030. So is that commitment to deliver zero carbon electricity by 2030 now just an aspiration?
Just a little clarification. So the £28 billion came from some academic research that looked at the level of ambition an incoming government should have to reach net zero by 2050, not the mission for energy security, clean energy power by 2030. They're slightly different targets. Now, of course, that was always going to be an ambition, but as I said, that's subject to the economy and the deals that we'll be able to do with the private sector. On the clean power mission by 2030, what does that mean? That means more offshore, onshore wind, more nuclear. We wanted to get carbon capture up and running. And in each of those cases, there may be a role for public subsidy, but it's different in different examples, which, if you'd like me to, I'll happily explain.
But the point is, these are now just loose aims. They're not clear commitments.
No, because as I say, it's an ambition, that's for sure. That's why we've talked about it on that basis.
I know, but you accepted initially that the 28 billion figure was the cost it would take to get there. Now, maybe you shouldn't have accepted that at the time, but you did. So now, if you backtrack on the commitment, it shows that the ultimate goal is less high of a priority.
No, so let me just give you a couple of examples to bring this to life. The types of business cases that I would be asked to approve in a Labour Treasury. Public subsidy is only relevant in a couple of circumstances. First, if it's a pure public sector project, I don't know, building a road, for example, where we have to pay for it ourselves. Second, when you're working with the private sector, but it's a really big project like a nuclear power station. We've seen that with Hinkley Point C. The government are trying to finance Sizewell C at the moment. It's right that the state is involved with that. But thirdly, and this is really where the Green Prosperity Plan for us is most relevant, where there are technologies or markets that are not yet fully up and running. That's why the private sector can't do it by itself. And that's why we've got to work with them to get it started.
So all of a sudden, you need the private sector to pick up the slack in a way that you didn't previously need to. Forgive me for pushing, because I know we've only got a minute or two.
If I could just reply to that point, because it's really important. We've never said we don't need the private sector. And quite frankly, the amount of money we need to invest in our country is much greater than £28 billion. You should talk to any of the business leaders that were with us yesterday. Public subsidy is only relevant in those particular use cases that I've set out. That is not about doing the whole job of clean power by 2030. That must be delivered by the private sector in its majority financing of these projects.
OK, well, we need to move on, or else we'll get into the final couple of questions. In terms of this corporate tax cap at 25%, a lot was made of that yesterday. I wonder if that was that big an announcement, or whether, in fact, the expectation already was that the only way is down now for corporate taxes. And whether also you would consider making a pledge that I think would be a bigger announcement for Labour to make, which is a cap on each of the income tax bands.
Well, thank you for your suggestion for Labour policy. We'll feed it into the team. Look, the announcement yesterday on corporation tax was important because business has told us, and it's there in the evidence, that the Conservatives and the number of chancellors and prime ministers they've been moving the corporation tax rates around. I think it was maybe 5 or 6 times since 2019. Now, for businesses, especially global investors, that's really annoying, because when you're trying to sign off investment decisions on particular projects, especially infrastructure in the UK, you look at the rate of return and how long it takes to pay back that initial investment. You have to factor in the amount of tax that you're expected to pay when you're doing that modelling. And so if the tax rate moves around all of the time, businesses can't invest in the UK because it's too uncertain. So what Rachel Reeves announced yesterday was a big announcement for business. It was welcomed by business, which is you will get stability under a future Labour government. Corporation tax will be set at the 25% that it is under the current government for the course of the next parliament. So that investors know that for the 4 or 5 years of the next government, it will not move around. That is the tax rate. And we want to give that stability so we can unlock the investment that our country needs.